And
yeah. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. So just to be clear, it wasn't designed to be a mea culpa for Pakistanis. We are here primarily to find hope for the future is why we're here. Our next speaker is also a remarkably accomplished young gentleman who happens to have seen vast expanses of the earth during his travels pretty much everywhere. His travels started in North India when India was still united. And since then, he's been through Pakistan to Europe, to the US, and it's our great fortune that he now lives in New Jersey. I'm talking about Dr. Syed Akhter Sahib, who is a surgeon by training, but a philosopher by disposition, who has an abiding respect for pretty much everything, but only in a superficial kind of way. Deep down inside, he has a lot of angst about everything, and I'm hoping that he will describe some of that angst today over the next 10 minutes. Ehtisham Sahib.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nadeem, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm not a public speaker, and so it's a difficult act to follow Nadeem and Mr. Casey. I'm going to dwell briefly on history of creation of Pakistan, the independence movement, and what followed. Briefly, in 1857, Indians rebelled against British occupation. At that time, it was East India Company. And for practical purposes, the last king of India, Bahadur Shah, ruled only in the fort in Delhi. But they got together for various reasons and rebelled. They would have been successful, but they were not united. They had poor leadership, and certain parts of India which had been unhappy with Mughal rule supported the British. In any case, the British won and brutally suppressed their opponents, and at the same time they rewarded the faithful. It's an unfortunate fact that most of the faithful were in what is Pakistan now. In the Mughal times, the king would give a jagir, a property, only for the lifetime of the person. After that, his successor would not automatically inherit the property. If the king liked the successor, he would get it. The British changed that. They made it into a hereditary property, and so created feudal landowners in North India, in West India, and these were the people who supported the British. In any case, after the dust was settled, Indians tried to get favor out of from the British, and again landowners led that struggle. Indian National Congress was actually founded by a British civil servant. His name was, I think, Octavius, in 1885. And it was, he was the first president. The second president was a Parsi gentleman. And it was non-communal, based on Hindus and Muslims and Parsis and Christians and everybody else. The second president was a Parsi gentleman, I can't recall the name, but Jinnah served as his secretary. Jinnah was perhaps the brightest young person in the Indian National Congress at that time. And it went on like that until in 1906, the Muslim League was founded by landowners. And the first session was in Dhaka. And Nawab Salimullah was the president. And Agha Khan and some other people had joined in. It was not anti-Hindu at that time. Congress and Muslim League tried to work together. And Jinnah was a very prominent person in that direction. So much so that in 1916, Jinnah engineered what's known as the Congress League Pact, under which minority rights were to be granted and guaranteed. The formula was that where Muslims were in majority, and the non-Muslims got more seats, and where non-Muslims were in the majority, Muslims got more seats. For example, in United Provinces, now called Uttar Pradesh, Muslims were 9.6%, but they were granted 15% of the seats in representation. And in the Punjab, for example, non-Muslims were, I think, 35 to 40%, but they were granted 45% representation. This was a great achievement. But then Mahatma Gandhi appeared on the scene, and he started introducing religious imagery into politics. Ram Raj and all that kind of thing. Jinnah, of course, opposed that very strongly. And for a while, it was not either domination. Then, after the First World War, Turkey was abolishing the caliphate, and Indian Muslims were supporting it. Jinnah opposed it. Gandhi supported it. And Jinnah lost the momentum. In fact, he was hooted out of a Congress session in 1921. I would not like to say why Gandhi supported the Caliphate movement, whether he just wanted the support of the Muslims or he really felt that way, that nobody has been able to say. But Jinnah lost his place. He was excluded. And in 1928, the Congress formed another committee under the presidency of Motilal Nehru, who was the father of Jawaharlal Nehru. And they pushed aside the Congress League Pact. They said Hindus and Muslims are the same and it doesn't matter. Jinnah was disgusted and he went to England. While in England, he dissociated himself completely from what was happening in India. There was, in 1935, there was an India Act under which provincial governments were to be formed after elections to the provincial assemblies. Muslims were feeling terribly left out, so a delegation went to England headed by Agha Khan and Liaquat Ali Khan, who asked Jinnah to come back. Jinnah came back, worked very hard, but in the 1937 election, most of the Muslim seats, actually at that time, Hindus and Muslims had separate constituencies. Most of the Muslim seats were won by the Congress. But Jinnah carried on. Then fortune smiled on him. World War II broke out. The British government wanted the support of the Congress, and the Congress demanded that independence be guaranteed after the war, which the British won't. So the Congress governments resigned. The result was that, and then they launched the Quit India movement, and the Congress leadership was put in jail. That was the opportunity that Jinnah availed of, and he swept the Muslim votes. After the World War, there were negotiations for transfer of power. A cabinet mission was sent which proposed that India be a confederation, East Wing and West Wing in the center. And it was proposed by the British. The Congress accepted it, and Muslim League accepted it. But then Pandit Nehru, who was the president of the Congress, went to Bombay and declared that the sovereign Constituent Assembly of India would not be bound by any agreements, and it will decide a constitution according to the number of votes. Of course, it was a flagrant violation of the agreement and the understanding. Then Jinnah repudiated the agreement. And in the meanwhile, in England, the Tory party lost, the Labour Party won, and Nehru was very close to the Labour leaders. The Viceroy of India was Field Marshal. He was replaced, and Mountbatten was sent. And Mountbatten and Nehru had very close relations. So in any case, Jinnah had to play the Muslim card. He was an atheist. He used to drink alcohol and eat pork, but he had to play the Muslim card. The other important factor was Jinnah was supported only by the people in minority provinces and Bengal. Punjab, Sindh, Frontier and Balochistan were indifferent to him. He could not have gained any support there, but then Congress decided that after independence, it will abolish the feudal system. And then everyone fell in line in what is Pakistan now. So anyway, the country was divided and there was bloodshed. There were no plans for transfer of population. In fact, Jinnah, a few days before independence, made a speech in Delhi that everyone should stay where they are. But then things happened. There were, and the riots were incited by the British. I know about Quetta. From India, we went to Quetta and Balochistan, and over there people told me that the British superintendent of police used to go out and shoot a few people so that next day they'll discover whether it was a Hindu or a Muslim or a Sikh, and they'll start fighting. People tell me, and they're pretty sure that the same thing happened in Lahore. So in any case, the country was partitioned. There were India and Pakistan. Pakistan was ostensibly made for the rights of the Muslims, not for Islam. But Jinnah was the only person who was secular. He died. Liaquat Ali Khan was a feudal landowner himself. He was Nawabzada. the Islamists forced the objectives resolution according to which Pakistan would be an Islamic state. There were no elections in Pakistan. In India they had passed a constitution and conducted first elections in 1950. In Pakistan there were no elections. In East Pakistan there was election in 1951 and the Muslim League lost. So they were scared. The other thing was that Pakistan had a dispute with India, and the army took advantage of it and grabbed most of the budget. East Pakistanis did not want that. And they felt that if East Pakistan is given the representation that it has a right to, then the army will be weakened. So, in brief, what they did was they subverted the government. The government dismissed the prime minister, and then the next governor general handed over to Ayub Khan. Ayub Khan fraudulently won an election against Miss Jinnah, and then caused riots in Karachi. That was the first time that there were ethnic riots in Pakistan, and that was in Karachi. His son Gohar Ayub, who later became the Speaker of the Assembly, led the rioting. I was a resident in civil hospital at that time, and I treated the casualties myself. Anyway, that went on. Then another martial administrator came, and he mistakenly, from the point of view of the establishment, called for elections on one man, one vote basis. Mujibur Rahman of East Pakistan won, and that process was subverted, and East Pakistan was treated worse than Russia was during World War II. That's what I understand. The person most responsible for that was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He supported the army. Without his support, the army could not have done what they did. So the country was split. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto took over what was left of Pakistan, and he caved in to extremist bigots. As Nadeem pointed out, alcohol was prohibited, and there was a plan of an entertainment center in Clifton in Karachi. That was stopped. Friday became the weekly holiday, and so on. That man, in order to stay in power, would do whatever heinous acts. Then he made the mistake of, he wanted to seem himself a grand person. So he called a meeting of the Islamic countries, and he wanted an atom bomb. Henry Kissinger told him that if you do this, we'll make an example out of you. And in the next election, they made an example out of him. Military took over, Ziaul Haq, whom Nadeem aptly described as a devil. I'm not sure if that was the exact word he used, but he was the devil incarnate. He was shunned by everyone till the Soviet Union went into Afghanistan. And Soviet Union went into Afghanistan because at that time Carter's presidency, Brzezinski has written about it, that they used to send saboteurs into the Asian Soviet republics provoking them, and that's why they came in. So it's not just Ziaul Haq, it's our great good country as well, which provoked these things. And then it went on from it to Taliban, Al-Qaeda, which were all supported by our good government. And then the Soviet Union left, and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were jilted, and they felt bad, and they started working against Western interests. And then Saudis got into the act during Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. They funded dollar for dollar. Whatever America gave, Saudis gave. Saudis, in addition to funding, they opened 22,000 madrasas in Pakistan, and they trained suicide bombers. Whenever there was a deficiency of persons in Afghanistan, they would close the madrasas in frontier province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa now, and send the students there. And so it's been going on and escalating. So it's not what is happening in Pakistan now is, in my opinion, a logical continuation of the creation itself. It was an extremist idea. Hindus and Muslims had lived in India for 1,000 years. They fought with each other, like people fight in New Jersey with their neighbors. But it was not a question of separation. So that's my submission, and thank you very much.
Destructive frame of mind today.
Yeah. We got to do.
Thank you very much, Ehtisham. So that was very, very nicely told. I have to, by way of full disclosure, I should tell everyone that one of the reasons I'm so partial to Ehtisham Sahib is because he and I went to the same medical school. And if you ever talk to him, ideally over a glass of whiskey, he will tell you that the best people ever to have walked on the streets of Pakistan are the ones that attended the medical school that you and I went to. I see Natasha and Kamran agree as well. So I was also remiss in not mentioning that Ehtisham Sahib has written an outstanding memoir, which was published 3 years ago? 2008, so 5 years ago. I'm a little off. And it's got a beautiful description of all of what he said in somewhat greater detail. And if I wasn't so senile, I would remember the name, but it's called, the name of the book is A Medical Doctor Examines Life on Three Continents. And the subtitle is A Pakistani View. So it's available online. I would strongly recommend that everyone go find that book and get yourselves a very interesting perspective on all that has passed the eyes of a true scholar, Ehtisham Sahib. So moving on, our third speaker is Waqar Azim Sahib. Some of you may have met him before, because every few months we impose on him and we twist his arm and we get him to teach us a thing or two about our own traditions, our own culture, and so on. And he is an encyclopedia of knowledge. And like any group that needs leadership, that needs their own elites, Waqar Sahib is our elite. And being that person, he handles the responsibility that comes with being the elite. And he takes it very seriously and has a very, very clear view on what the present is and what the future is likely to be. So I'm going to invite him to come say a few words over the next 10 minutes, and also remind him that the topic was to seek hope in whatever the present is. And if there's no hope at all, then don't tell us. We'll find out the hard way. Waqar Sahib.